Are we rolling? Okay, we are, okay. I know I might sound crazy to most people when I put this out there, but I know there's also a small chance that this will change something. I've seen the comments on the uploads of the tapes, so I know I'm not alone. Let me introduce myself. I'm Silvia Flowers. I've been researching the Dreamworld's a conspiracy for the last handful of days. I know others have been researching it longer, but I wanted to give what I believe to be the true timeline of events. For most of this, I'm going to be chronological, but we have to start in the very, very far future to get the full picture. It begins with two brothers who are mechanics or repairmen of some kind. They have old gadgets and trinkets that they repair, one of which is an old camera. One of these brothers, Agnes, was satisfied with this job. The other, Edmund, was not. Edmund met a creature named Xavier one day while venturing from his home, and Xavier told him about something quite important: essence and soul energy. Though warned against it, Edmund began to tamper with it, attempting to revolutionize the world with it. Angus joined Edmund in his experiments, though he didn't know just how much damage Edmund had done. He found out when they had managed to make a gateway, a portal. The two brothers got into a fight. Edmund pushed Angus into the gateway and followed him shortly after. Angus's soul was ripped apart, and Edmund was only able to hang on to one piece of it. The brothers' gateway was faulty, which brings the two of them to the chronological start of this story. From now on, I'll be referring to the creature Edmund became as Litho, as I strongly believe the two are one and the same. Where was I? Right. Litho had been transported to just before the 1800s, say 1799 or so. He'd been placed near a rather influential family's manor, which we now know to be the home of Allison and his family. Litho haunted, for lack of a better term, his family for the duration of their lives, taking Allison as a student. He would learn to gain essence from his audiences through his violin playing. Now, presumably after Allison died, Litho continued to haunt and stalk the same family line, or potentially he shifted gears. One other person Litho haunted during this time, a few generations before the present, could be the spirit possessing Winnie. A man named Carlos Nicholson, driven by grief over his wife, ventured into the caves where Dreamworld now resides above in pursuit of immortality. That's where he met Litho and found his camera, which eventually led him to die in the caverns. Before this, he ran an arcade, Nickel per Play, that appears a few times throughout the story. Now, flashing forward to the people we're most familiar with, I'll focus on Sara Covetman. Sara, as a child, was rather poor, but at some point her family moved to the wealthier side of town, where she continued school. She was bullied relentlessly by most notably 3 other children for being poor. I'm sure we're all familiar with the incident that this caused, when Sara wandered into Happy Hollow following what she believed to have been a bunny, and what I believed to have been Litho all along. Her bullies followed her in turn. They began to pick on her and play with matches, leading to a forest fire that, in the panic, led Sara to murder the 3 bullies, at least one of which she pushed over a cliff. She managed to escape the situation without penalty, but the guilt from the incident provided an opening for her to become Litho's next victim. Sometime after this, an NB named Celio Klein became her guardian due to her parents going missing. In middle school, Sara met a boy named Louis Sprite. The two quickly became friends, and later they met another boy named Oliver Acrimony. Sometime during the trio's middle or high school years, Louis met someone who all of us are familiar with at this point, Wiatt Nicholson, and later the two began dating. In high school, the 3 founders entered an engineering class taught by Eric Gale. They excelled in the class and began planning Dreamworld entertainment around this time. Sara came up with the ideas, Louis made them into something solid, and Oliver made sure they worked. After they won a robotics competition, they would be rewarded with an abandoned warehouse, equipment, and a large sum of money that they would use to start work on Dreamworld entertainment, alongside their ex-professor, now colleague, Eric Gale. The founders would move away, unfortunately forcing Wiatt and Louis to break up. Wiatt still requested Louis to contact him every week so he knew he was okay. After work began, Sara would be contacted by a mysterious someone who we suspect to be Carlos Nicholson, who encouraged her to experiment with immortality. After 4 different experiments to create new life failed, breaking an animatronic with each, Sara would switch gears to preserving existing life instead. Carlos would also reveal his possession of the Winnie animatronic and introduce the Collector, a massive soul that Litho was trying to use to try and preserve a fragment of his brother Angus and eventually build a gateway between the spirit and mortal realms. Oliver and Louis didn't know what Sara was doing, and her secrets began to cause arguments, eventually culminating in the near death of Louis Bright at her hands. She just barely preserved his body below the facility, and his soul went on to inhabit the Starlight animatronic. This first disappearance drew the attention of Damien Klein, a paranormal investigator with an eye able to see ghosts, who would continue to investigate throughout the other disappearances. The death of Lewis was followed by a long string of deaths conducted by Winnie after the establishment opened, beginning with Eric Gale, who burned to death in Lewis's house while looking for him, and his soul would live on in the ribbon dancer robot. 2 workers, Mike, whose head was crushed in a trash compactor, and Alyssa, whose death is unknown, went on to possess Rex and Glory. Following were the deaths of 3 children who went on to possess the triplet animatronics, Masquerade, Melody, and Mimic. Their death was followed by Eric's daughter Carly's, who died while searching for him and went on to possess the cheer animatronic. Sometime after this, Oliver's younger siblings, Benjamin and Liz, were killed by Sarah, Ben by a faulty VR headset, and Liz by Sarah herself because she witnessed Ben's death. The 2 would go on to possess Lolly and Pop respectively. Their deaths would act as the final straw for Oliver, motivating him to investigate Sarah for himself, and out of fear Sarah would set a trap for him, heavily injuring him by dropping a TV on his head. I'm kinda surprised he survived that. Along the way, Sarah ended up lashing out at Winnie, because there was no rhyme or reason to the triplets dying, but the confrontation ended with Litho taking over her body. We haven't seen the real Sarah since. During the disappearances, Sarah and Winnie started a sister company, Watchful Eye Toys, to gather more souls. It's run by Norman, an ex-employee of Dreamworld who had a crush on Sarah and proceeded to be mutilated and essentially murdered. Watchful Eye is known for producing, among other things, Twimblos, artificial animals. I actually have 2 of them that I got before I started investigating this place. Ursa, Mello, come here. Say hi, Mello.
Hi, Mello.
No, you're Mello. Alright, you 2 go on and play. Now, we can finally get into something a little more straightforward. The main story we've been following through the videos. Wiatt's time working at Dreamworld Entertainment as a mechanic. Obviously, Lewis couldn't very well call Wiatt, and he wasn't exactly safe, so Wiatt came to investigate Dreamworld himself while recording the events on an old camera passed down by his grandfather, the previously mentioned Carlos Nicholson, and sending them to Rainbot to upload. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this part, but I'll go over it for anyone who's made it this far without watching it. Wiatt quickly figures out that Starlight is in fact Lewis by going against the company orders and interacting with the animatronics. After 3 months of Wiatt's working there, a virus made by Oliver infected most of the animatronics and computers inside the building, causing it to collapse with Wiatt inside. Most workers and children had evacuated, but Wiatt was stuck at the bottom of the facility with Starlight, one of 3 uncorrupted animatronics. The 2 meet Lollipop, and Pop is acting slightly homicidal due to the virus causing him to think Wiatt and any other human is Sarah. Wiatt and Starlight run from Lollipop, but Star is captured by Pop, and Wiatt is chased by the triplets. He happens upon the kill code for the virus, Quixotic, and it puts it into the triplets, disarming them. Ribbon Dancer reveals that he wasn't infected, and tells Wiatt that Starlight's been infected. He also assists in coming up with a plan to recover Starlight. Wiatt essentially sets himself up to be caught by Star, and stuns him with the knowledge that Wiatt is aware that he's Lewis. Wiatt cures Star of the virus, and Star figures out that Wiatt knew that he was Lewis the entire time. Wiatt's goal at this point is to return all of the animatronics back to their normal state, both virus-free and human. Wiatt and company make their way to Trampoland while searching for Pop, and they sure do find him, but he finds them too. Pop tries to send the infected Rex after Wiatt. Star protests, and before you know it, Wyatt's fallen through a hole in the floor from the building collapse and is hanging onto a ledge to keep from falling into the water from Sea Venture, being threatened by Sarah, rather Litho. So she pushes Wiatt into the water and Glory leaves him to drown. Fortunately, the ghost of Allison saves him and brings him to the display area of Sea Venture, revealing his belief that Wiatt could be the one to save all of the souls trapped in this area. Allison assists Wiatt in his journey along the areas, explaining along the way that none of this has to do with magic at all, it's entirely science. Unfortunately, regardless of the progress they make to make it out of the glass tunnels, Glory still nearly drowns Wiatt again. Luckily, with Allison's help, Wiatt repairs Glory and the 2 start making their way to find Rex. During this time, Sarah, Winnie, and Oliver, with his head still in a TV, meet with the corrupted animatronics. Sarah and Winnie proposing to hold Oliver ransom to lure Wiatt towards them. So, the corrupted animatronics make an announcement about the ransom, and our 2 good parties, Starlight, Ribbon Dancer, and the triplets, as well as Glory and Wiatt, start on their way to make Lollipop. Glory has to leave Wiatt due to her grand size in a caved-in pathway, but luckily, Wiatt meets a seemingly mute animatronic, Nightlight. Nightlight talks to Wiatt through writing and drawing until Rex arrives, to which she gives him a crowbar to defend himself. Wiatt knocks out Rex to fix the virus in him, knocking off his arm in the process. After Rex is repaired with the help of some duct tape, Winnie approaches the 2 with an offer. He reveals how unenthused he was to work with Litho, and that Sarah has been Litho the entire time that Wyatt's worked there. He tells Wiatt that the main way to thwart Litho's plans is to release the Collector. Left alone with Oliver, Papa's defensive and frustrated, but Lolly is talking civilly. Pop keeps getting aggravated, and the tension builds until he lashes out. Oliver explains one memory that the three of them share. When Liz and Ben were younger, Oliver would take them to the county fair and be taken through the haunted house. And Pop finally relents. Lolly takes the virus out of him, and the two are more motivated than ever to get Litho, the real Litho. During this time, the detective that I mentioned, Damien Klain, joins Star's party, and the six of them meet a twin blow who will be later named Oddity. Finally, the three groups meet, and at this point, the only corrupted animatronic is Cheer. Seeing the corrupted Cheer, rather Carly, Eric takes control briefly. His emotions overwhelm Carly, and before she can properly react, Glory breaks down a wall to meet with the other groups. Sometime during this reunion, it seems that Winnie left the facility to interfere with Rainbot themselves. Oh no. In the commotion, Litho starts to escape down a hatch, to which Wiatt lunges after her, and Lewis catches him before he can fall down after her, protesting that they just found each other again, and as Oddity climbs onto his shoulders, he mentions he's not sure how much his support beam can take. Unfortunately, it isn't much, because it swiftly breaks afterwards, and the three fall down the hatch. Lewis is unable to move without his support beam, so, in the meantime, Oddity brings them the laptop of one of the other workers, and they end up reviewing security footage that reveals that some other workers, a little girl, and the 4 previously scrapped animatronics, including Nightlight, had been trapped in the rubble as well. Wiatt and Lewis make a plan of what steps they're going to take. First, fix Star's support beam, then find Sara and capture her, then free the other Dreamworld employees, and then free Cheer. As Wiatt and Lewis make their way across the lowest floors, they follow Oddity. This is where he gets his name. Oh, and they learn Oddity can talk. The little twin blow leads them to a room, the room where Sara preserved Lewis and all of the others' bodies. Obviously, Lewis is shaken by this, but is luckily distracted by Allison returning to offer his help. Allison explains that Litho is trying to escape, but there was a way to prevent his escape, waking the Collector. The group finds a toolbox with Allison's help, and Wiatt fixes Starlight's support beam. They continue on without Allison, and quickly find the Collector, who Wiatt wakes up...
Wake the fuck up!
Rather rudely. Fortunately, after some explaining, they're glad to help knock down a bunch of boulders. But Wiatt gets the idea that he should free the lost soul fragments in the Collector, so, with some convincing Star and Oddity free the soul fragments, powering down the Collector animatronic. This, by proxy, frees Angus's soul fragment. Litho arrives in the cavern Star and Wiatt and, furious that they've released the Collector, and he grows even angrier when he sees Angus. He also reveals that he bound Allison to his old violin. Conjuring his blue strings, he knocks out Star and Wiatt and repairs the facility. Whew! I thought the Sara chapter was long. As the facility was being ready to reopen, the little girl who had been trapped under the facility with Nightlight, Millie, Gruff, and Lorenzo, Hazel, was taken to her parents. On her way out, she found Allison's violin in the trash compactor, and she grabbed it. After the facility was repaired, Winnie had been sent to work by Litho to erase each animatronic's memory, and he does so successfully to all but Lewis. Lewis begs for mercy long enough, crying out that he just got Wiatt back, and Winnie has an ounce of sympathy, knowing what it's like to lose someone. And he strikes a deal. Lewis will keep the others in line, in return for keeping his memories. It took over a week for Wiatt to wake up once the facility had been repaired. The Dreamworld website is brought into the conversation as well, as it helped convince everyone that Dreamworld was an innocent, fun company from the 2000s. Luckily, Litho is relatively merciful and allows Wiatt to continue working as a mechanic. Wiatt goes back to Damien's sibling, Celia's house, to rest alongside Oliver, Damien, and Celia himself. Unfortunately, Oliver had been having relentless nightmares. Damien and Wiatt end up resolving to search for the real identities of each animatronic to help restore their memories. Celia soon arrives at their house, and upon meeting Wiatt, recalls his father, their ex-client. Damien and Wiatt choose to plan on their own, but Celia, knowing Sara well, wants to pay her a visit. In the first week, the animatronics keep having dreams and memories of their old lives, which does spell trouble for Winnie and Litho. And alongside this, Lewis finds out that Ribbon Dancer never lost his memories, and that he is essentially two beings living off of one soul. One such incident of an animatronic regaining their memories happens to Lollipop, who encounter a set of notes about Oliver and have to be reset. Hazel starts documenting her time with the 4 animatronics in her house as she searches for their secret identities. She also mentions the violin she took, and as she does, Allison begins playing it. Once Hazel sees him, he mentions how he'll be able to help with the Dreamworld mystery. The next day, Nightlight, while disguised, and Hazel head to the Dreamworld entertainment facility to retrieve some files Allison talked about. Hazel runs to grab said files, and Star ends up bumping into Night, causing the both of them to freeze in some kind of trance. This is also the time that Celio decides to talk to Sara, though they don't know it's actually Litho. They tell Sara she should address her past mistakes because otherwise more people will get hurt. Unfortunately, Litho doesn't care enough about pretending to be Sara anymore to listen to them. Star interrupts the brief meeting the two have, only to be told to capture or kill Celio. At this, Celio obviously bolts. They run into Ribbon Dancer and beg him for help, but Star catches up to them fast enough to cut them off and capture them. During the events of the reopening, amazing automation or the interactive tapes take place. Morris, the vampire backcourt jester, possessed by the soul of Andrew Owens, one of Dreamworld's late employees, hosts it, alongside Norman. During this, Morris continuously is made aware by the comments of the horrors of Dreamworld, as one commenter puts it. After the final episode of the interactive tapes, Astro the Crow is revealed, and is taken to another room to be, given a soul by Norman. Before Morris can turn the camera off, Oddity brings him a video of Celio and Wiatt talking about their identities, which gives Morris the idea that Astra should decide some things for herself as well, causing him to run to Norman with the idea, and catch him, and some twin blows, with Andrew's arm. This obviously doesn't bode well. As Norman threatens Morris for witnessing this, Oddity rips part of Norman's, fake face clean off. Norman reveals that Sara plans to kill Celio at Sara's birthday party, and agrees to answer all of Morris's questions in exchange for his face back. Meanwhile, the day before Sara's birthday party, Wiatt heads to the police station to report Litho again, which ends up being futile. He leaves, understandably frustrated, and gets into Damien's car. The two converse for a while before Damien notes that Celio may have disappeared at the facility, and Wiatt resolves to find out where they went by returning even after he completed his shift. Begrudgingly, Damien drops Wiatt at Dreamworld Entertainment, and he enters. He's warned by a coworker named Athena to get out before closing, because there's a new, harsh security system in place. Wiatt proceeds to a lower floor, and talks to a handful of animatronics who tell him that Star has been acting odd, and disprove Wyatt's belief that he's been avoiding him. From there, Wiatt heads down to Starlight Theater and meets Lollipop and Ribbon Dancer. Lolly and Pop both request that Wiatt take a look at them, bringing up their odd dreams and memory loss. Wiatt agrees to, but mentions needing to visit Star first, and all three animatronics comment on Star's odd behavior as well. When Wiatt enters the theater, Star is stressing about the decorations, and when made aware of Wiatt, he dawdles, avoiding him and making excuses not to respond. That is, until Wiatt finds Celio's beanie, and begins to panic, causing Lewis to start apologizing profusely, and in the process he lets Wyatt's name slip. Wiatt recognizes, finally, that this means that Lewis never was memory wiped at all, and as Wiatt yells and Lewis pleads, Ribbon Dancer steps in to explain that he helped kidnap Celio too, and that there was nothing that either of them could have done that wouldn't have put them at risk. Wiatt is slightly confused, but mostly just relieved to have his friend and boyfriend back. Litho calls him to his office, and Ribbon Dancer gives Wiatt a puzzle on his way out. Litho tells Wiatt to go home with a healthy amount of threats sprinkled in, both from himself and Winnie. Wiatt begrudgingly decides to go home, somewhat fearing the new security system. As he enters the lobby with the intention of leaving, he's stopped by Lollipop and the other animatronics, all asking him questions and effectively stalling him until the doors lock and the lights dim, meaning the facility is closed. Star warns Wiatt to run before the security system kicks in, and though he protests, he eventually runs with the pressure from Star. He enters the passcode that he figures out from Ribbon Dancer's puzzle into the elevator. Wiatt then has to navigate through the Math House, Trampoland, and Sea Venture respectively. Throughout this, he enters Lollipop, Ribbon Dancer, and Rex in his escape from the respective floors they guard, and along the way he collects tapes with footage hinting at the older parts of the timeline. As Wiatt arrives at Starlight Theater for the second time that day, Star begs him to leave, and Winnie arrives beside Star and explains their deal. Star also explains the strange dreams and experiences Lollipop had. Winnie notes that the erasure of memories is dangerous if done too many times, like erasing a hole in a piece of paper. Winnie and Star are also constantly at risk, because if they don't do what Litho says, they'll be taken out. Therefore, Wiatt staying past his welcome put Winnie in danger, and therefore put Star in danger. Star once again pleads for Wiatt to leave, but he won't leave without Celio despite Winnie's threats. So, upon Star's request, Wiatt calls Damien, and asks him to meet him beneath the facility because he's still not leaving without Celio. Another chase like the ones in the upper floors begins, this time with Star, and by the end, Wiatt pleads for Star to let him go. And Star finally relents. Winnie yells at him, but Star responds by punching him in the face, which presumably starts a fight between them. Wiatt enters the laboratory and finds Celio, where Damien meets them, carrying Oliver, who is now conscious, with him. Wiatt berates him for bringing Oliver in such poor condition, and Celio notes that they found some information about Oliver's TV, and may be able to help remove it. As they exit the laboratory, Damien reveals that he entered the building through less than legal means, causing Celio to have a small chat about safety with him. As they do, Wiatt talks to Oliver about how he feels, and Oliver mentions how strange it is that none of the animatronics have noticed that they're, animatronics. This gives Wiatt an idea, and they continue onwards with a more solid plan. As everyone gets in the car, Wiatt returns to the building and calls all of the animatronics to the lobby with an alert button. Rex starts off aggravated, but Star explains that Wiatt won't be brought to Sara, and Cheer comes in holding Ribbon Dancer's detached head. This causes everyone a healthy dose of existential crisis. Well, everyone except Starlight, Ribbon Dancer, and Melody for some reason. As the animatronics talk amongst themselves, Star and Wiatt have a heartfelt goodbye. Well, until Wyatt's next shift. It's promptly cut short by Damien honking and Wyatt swearing in response. The final entry in the web series so far is a recording of Wiatt and Damien covering what they've gone through in the past few episodes, mostly Allison's disappearance, Litho's journal entries, etc. Wiatt reveals a plastic children's toy, a camera belonging to Carly. It details a brief encounter Carly had with Xavier, and her death at the hands of Winnie. After viewing it, Wiatt and Damien are understandably not in the best of moods, and begin to argue about the importance of the tapes and the futility of their efforts, until Oliver draws their attention by walking into the room. He apologizes for interrupting, coughing and hacking as he does, but says that he has an idea of where to visit next. Watchful Eye Toys. Oh my goodness, that was a long video. But now you're all caught up on the timeline as I understand it. Thank you all for staying until the end here. I know some parts of this narrative are a bit choppy, such as the order of the deaths and Watchful Eye Toys' relation to it all, and I left out a couple smaller things, but I think it's pretty cohesive. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I'm gonna go rest for a bit. This video took me ages, and it's my first ever video essay, so remember to drink water, stay warm, and keep yourself safe.